Hello, my name is Maria Borgoff, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about why self love is not logical. Now, when I say that, I don't mean to disregard it because it's irrational. I don't mean to say that self love is purely based on intuition. But what I do mean is that self love does not always make sense. So, self love is this kind of big topic right now. It's super trendy. Um, I think it's super trendy around a lot of circles of women. A lot of women are being empowered and encouraged to practice self love. And it's kind of being glossed over as this practice of doing things that instantly make you feel good, such as taking a bubble bath, going to a yoga class, maybe buying yourself healthy food, or taking yourself on a little shopping trip if you feel so inclined. Um, doing small things for yourself to show signs of love like you would for another person that you love, your partner, your spouse, your family member, sibling, anything like that. So, self love, we're talking a lot about kind of gift giving in a way to ourselves. But what happens is, what I mean by getting glossed over is that kind of narrow perspective of self love is more of self pampering. And what I want to talk about today is the self love that is not logical and is kind of not so much self pampering, but more of the core of what love really is. Now, when you love someone, you love them for their faults. You love them when they are down. You challenge them to be a better person. And you also bring them up. You also encourage them. Maybe you pamper them too. So when we talk about self-love, we're talking about all aspects of it. Not just the gift giving, not just the pampering sessions, not just these kind of, I like to call them frou-frou things. Now, those are great. Those are definitely self love. Do not count those out. But I think what we tend to ignore, and I think the part of self love that doesn't allow men to be as inclined to practice it, is this kind of glossing over as self love is just this really beautiful thing. But when we love ourselves, just like when we love another person, we accept all of it, the whole package. We love the bad things about ourselves. We love the good things. We embrace the ugly parts and the things that we're ashamed of. And now this can be a mental kind of intellectualization of those things, where as you say, you know what, um, I don't really feel like a very good person today, but I still love myself. So you can intellectualize it. But practicing self love, and this is what is being talked about a lot, is how can we act on that? How can you say, I still love myself even though I don't feel like the best person right now? What action can you take to speak up with that self love? Now, another part of self love that doesn't really get talked about a lot is that it should feel very humbling. It should not always feel like I'm the best, look at me, wow, like I love myself, I'm full of it, and just, everyone should love themselves too. It should be a humbling experience that brings us to our knees. Because if we can hold the amount of love it takes to love our whole self, if we can hold that, it's a lot. It's powerful. And it should humble us a little bit. We should feel as if we have just accomplished a great thing, but also as if we have a lot of work to do too. And I think something that might kind of push men away from this practice is maybe not having this space in our society for expressing that. And because when we love ourselves, because it is so humbling, we put ourselves in a very vulnerable position. We have to admit that we are weak in some capacity. We have to admit that we have faults, that we are not perfect, and then we have to love them. But before we love them, we have to see it fully for what it is. We have to see the imperfections. And I think, I could go off on this, but biologically, men have been the evolutionarily the stronger, physically, upper body strength, stronger sex. And our society is shifting right now to create space for men to be vulnerable and for men to stand in that place of admitting their faults, admitting that they are imperfect, and loving themselves for it. So it's happening, it's shifting right now, but we have to allow for that shift to happen. We have to allow for ourselves. Women have to provide that space for men to be vulnerable, and men also have to demand it. Men have to say, no, I have feelings. I have parts of me that need to be loved. And to not be ashamed of that. Women are not ashamed of it. Well, to some extent we are, but there is this rising trend right now with empowering women and allowing them to stand in their full beauty, despite what they look like, despite how they feel, to embrace everything about themselves. And men have to do the same. Men have to demand that they need that space to be vulnerable, that they need that space to be and stand in their imperfections. But that has to come both from men and women. Women have to allow for that space to create it, and men have to ask for it and to maybe take advantage of it when it is there and to not shy away from it. And men can also do this with each other. It seems as if it's a trend for women to kind of open up a little bit more with other women, whereas men, there's maybe some small boundaries that happen with people who aren't at this really deep level with each other. So maybe as a man in this culture right now, allowing that space to enter into your other male friendships rather than just with your partner in this kind of intimate space, but allowing yourself to be vulnerable in spaces that are a little uncomfortable. Another thing about self-love that doesn't get talked about a lot is that it should be uncomfortable. It should be a little, oh, I don't really want to do that. But then I get there and it's like, I'm so glad that I did. Now, bubble baths and hot tea, kind of self-love acts aren't always uncomfortable unless you have a lot of kind of self-hating tendencies. But we do want to focus on the things that are slightly uncomfortable. And if opening up to one of your good friends, one of your good male friends, is something that's a little uncomfortable, but it's something that will allow you to practice self-love, then I really invite you to do that. And to share your thoughts about this. Where do you feel like you would like to have that space? Is it with your friends? Is it with your partner? Is it maybe in your working space, your professional environment? Do you feel like you are unable to kind of stand in who you are and to love yourself fully in your professional field? What are some of the major aspects of your life that you feel you want to demand that space for self-love. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And again, I invite you to stand up and demand these spaces for men to be vulnerable, to love themselves, to admit that they are not perfect, always strong, defensive beings. So that is it for today. Again, I'd love to hear from you and love to hear your thoughts on what self-love is for men and maybe some of the challenges you've seen as well in practicing this. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week.